When I was in school and stuff, I was mad because I was short and I was the smallest guy. But when I played basketball, I didn't see height. I felt like I was just as tall as everybody else. I've been against all odds my whole life, but that's not gonna stop me. It just made me work even harder. It just made me want to prove them wrong.
In 2017, a 5'9" point guard looked the entire NBA in the eyes, well, looked them in the chest, and told them he was the most dangerous scorer on the planet. And for one magical, heartbreaking season, he was right. But here's the thing. You forgot. You let the injuries, the trades, and the fallout erase what Isaiah Thomas actually did that year. An MVP candidate, a playoff hero, a man who played through tragedy that would have broken anyone else. What IT did in 2017 should have made him a Boston legend forever. Instead, it became the beginning of the end. So how does a 5'9" last pick go from unwanted to unstoppable, and then lose everything? It starts with understanding just how impossible Isaiah Thomas was supposed to be. June 23rd, 2011, the NBA draft. 60 players get their name called that night. Isaiah Thomas waited for every single one. Pick after pick, team after team, passing on the kid from Washington, the Kings finally called his name with the 60th pick. Dead last. Here's the crazy part. He was named after Isaiah Thomas, the Pistons legend, a two-time champion, named after NBA royalty, and still, not a single team believed in him enough to take him earlier. You want to know who got drafted ahead of IT that night? Jimmer Fredette, Bismack Biyombo, John Vesely, players who became punchlines or completely forgotten. But the 5'9" guard from Seattle, he was the afterthought. And that height? Let's talk about it. 5'9" in a league where the average player stands 6 feet 6 inches. Every night, IT gave up 7, 8 inches to guys guarding him. On defense, nightmare. Every scouting report said the same thing. Too small, can't defend, won't survive. How do you become an elite scorer when defenders can see over your head? How do you drive the rim when centers are waiting like skyscrapers? The NBA had decided Isaiah Thomas wasn't built for this, but IT didn't get the memo. Sacramento gave him 3 years, then shipped him to Phoenix. The Suns kept him 8 months before trading him again. 2 franchises. Twice told he wasn't the guy. Then Boston came calling in 2015, grabbing him for almost nothing. The Celtics weren't getting a star. They were getting a reclamation project, an undersized spark plug. At least, that's what everyone thought. What those teams didn't understand was that Isaiah Thomas didn't just have a chip on his shoulder. He had a boulder. Every draft pick before him, fuel. Every trade, more fuel. Every analyst who said he was too small, gasoline on the fire. IT once said he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. He's got a whole tooth up there. That refusal to accept what everyone decided about him, that's what separated him from every other undersized guard who flamed out. By 2016, Isaiah Thomas had proven he belonged, proved the doubters wrong, earned respect, became an all-star. But 2017, he was about to prove he belonged in MVP conversations, and he'd do it in the most dramatic way imaginable. The 2016-17 season wasn't just good for Isaiah Thomas. It was historic. It was the kind of season that makes you rewrite what you thought was possible. 28.9 points per game, third in the entire league. He's dropping nearly 30 a night while being the shortest player on the court in almost every single game. Add in 5.9 assists, an all-star starter nod, and by season's end, 5th place in MVP voting. Let that sink in for a second. A 5'9" last pick was standing in MVP conversations next to Westbrook, Harden, LeBron, and Kawhi. When's the last time someone that small was even mentioned for MVP? You'd have to go back decades. But the stats don't even tell the real story. Because Isaiah Thomas wasn't just scoring. He was assassinating teams when it mattered most. They called him the king in the fourth. And that wasn't some marketing slogan. That was a statistical fact. In fourth quarters that season, IT averaged 9.8 points per game. That's not a typo. Nearly 10 points every single fourth quarter, one of the highest marks in NBA history. When games got tight, when defenses locked in, when everyone in the building knew the ball was going to the little guy, he still cooked. Game after game, the same story. Celtics down late, crowd holding their breath, and IT pulling up from 30 feet like it was nothing. Floaters over 7-footers, step-back threes in defenders' eyes. The fourth quarter belonged to him, and Brad Stevens knew it. The Celtics offense was architected around their 5'9" weapon. Pick and rolls designed to get IT downhill, screens to free him for pull-ups. The entire system flowed through a player that every other coach in the league would have benched for size. Teams knew what was coming. They schemed for it all week. Double teams, traps, switching everything, didn't matter. IT carved them up anyway, night after night. Same result. The results? Boston finished 53-29, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and IT was the engine driving everything. The TD Garden crowd didn't just love him, they worshiped him. Every fourth quarter comeback, every clutch triple, the building shook. He was their guy. The heart and soul of a franchise that hadn't felt this alive in years. Isaiah Thomas had done the impossible, the last pick, the undersized project, the guy everyone gave up on. He turned doubt into dominance and made Boston believe they had their next franchise icon. But then right as the playoffs began, right as IT was about to cement his legacy on the biggest stage, he faced something basketball couldn't prepare him for, something no amount of heart could fix. April 15th, 2017. The Celtics are the number 1 seed. Isaiah Thomas is at the absolute peak of his powers. Tomorrow, the playoffs begin. Everything IT has worked for, every doubt he silenced, every trade, he survived. Every fourth quarter, he's dominated. It all leads here. And then his world collapsed. His younger sister, China, was killed in a car accident. She was 22 years old, her whole life ahead of her. One day, before the biggest moment of his career, Isaiah Thomas lost his little sister, the girl who watched him get drafted last, who cheered for him through Sacramento, Phoenix, and finally Boston, who believed in her big brother when nobody else did. Gone, just like that. Now IT faced an impossible decision. Does he play? Does he step away from basketball to grieve, to process, to be with his family? Nobody would have blamed him, not a single person. The whole world would have understood. But this is Isaiah Thomas, the kid who was told his whole life he couldn't do things. Less than 24 hours after losing China, IT suited up for Game 1 against the Chicago Bulls. He walked onto that court carrying weight that no stat sheet could ever measure. And somehow, impossibly, he played. 33 points, 6 assists, a playoff win. After the game, he broke down, tears streaming down his face, barely able to speak. But he played for her, and he kept playing, game after game, round after round. Every time he hit a big shot, he pointed to the sky. The Boston crowd knew. They chanted his name, not just because he was scoring, but because they understood what it was costing him. Then came May 2nd, 2017, Game 2 against the Washington Wizards. It would have been China's 23rd birthday. Isaiah Thomas dropped 53 points. 53. On the day his sister should have been celebrating another year of life, IT delivered one of the greatest playoff performances in NBA history. A game nobody who watched it will ever forget. He couldn't give her a birthday present, so he gave her this. Every bucket, every clutch shot, every moment for China. The basketball world watched in awe. This wasn't just athleticism. This was something deeper, something that transcends sports. But what most people didn't know, IT wasn't just playing through grief, he was playing through a hip injury that was getting worse by the game. Every drive to the rim, every landing, every minute on the court, he was sacrificing his body for this team, this city, this moment. His heart was broken, his hip was deteriorating, and still, he kept going. Isaiah Thomas had given Boston everything, his talent, his tears, his body, his health. He played through tragedy, that would have shattered most people and delivered performances that'll never be forgotten. And in return, well, this is where the story stops being inspiring and starts being heartbreaking. The Celtics made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. IT made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. After everything, the grief, the pain, the 53-point masterpiece, Boston was 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. The city was electric. Banners felt inevitable, but LeBron James was waiting. Cleveland gentlemen swept them. 5 games. Series over. And IT, his hip was barely holding together. You could see it. The explosiveness fading. The movements more labored. Every cut looked painful. Every landing grimaced through. But he kept fighting until there was nothing left to give. Season over. But the future looked bright, right? Isaiah Thomas had just put together one of the most remarkable seasons in NBA history. An MVP candidate, a playoff warrior, a man who played through unimaginable loss. Boston loved him. The city loved him. This was supposed to be the beginning of a dynasty. IT knew his worth too. When asked about his upcoming contract, he had one answer: back up the Brinks truck. And honestly, he'd earned every penny. After what he sacrificed for that franchise, Boston was supposed to reward him. Max contract, retired jersey, Celtic for life. That was the plan. Then August 22nd, 2017 happened. Isaiah Thomas was traded to Cleveland for Kyrie Irving, the heart and soul of Boston. The guy who dropped 53 points on the birthday of his sister who passed away. The king in the 4th who carried the franchise to the 1 seed. Traded, shipped out, gone. The basketball world was stunned. Fans were devastated. Grown men cried. Social media erupted. Players around the league couldn't believe it. IT had given that organization everything: his talent, his body, his heart during the darkest moment of his life. And they moved on like it was just business, because to them it was. See, what Boston knew that we didn't, that hip injury was worse than anyone realized. Much worse. The same injury IT played through to deliver those legendary performances had caused serious structural damage. He wasn't the same player anymore. Maybe he never would be. Cleveland found out fast. IT played just 15 games for the Cavs, averaging 14.7 points, half of what he put up in Boston. The burst was gone. The explosion had disappeared. The king in the 4th couldn't even stay on the court. Then came the spiral, traded to the Lakers, waived, signed by Denver, waived again, bounced from team to team like a journeyman. The man who was 5th in MVP voting became a guy fighting for roster spots, from 29 points a game to out of the league. In 2017, Isaiah Thomas was unstoppable. By 2020, he was unemployed. And you can't help but wonder, what if? What if he hadn't played through that injury? What if he'd shut it down, gotten surgery, preserved his body? What if Boston had shown loyalty to the man who showed them everything? What if the NBA valued sacrifice as much as it values production? At 28 years old, IT should have been entering his prime. Instead, his prime was one single season, 1 year of magic before it all disappeared. The NBA moved on. New stars emerged. New stories took over. And somehow, one of the most dominant, emotional, impossible seasons in league history started to fade from memory. But we shouldn't let it. A 5'9" last pick looked the entire NBA in the chest, and for one season, he was the most dangerous player alive. 2017 Isaiah Thomas was proof that heart can overcome height, that you can be doubted your entire life and still demand MVP votes. But it's also a reminder that sports can be cruel, that giving everything doesn't guarantee a happy ending. That playoff run was for China, and those 53 points on her birthday, that will never be forgotten by anyone who watched it. So yeah, you forgot how insane 2017 Isaiah Thomas was. But now you remember, and honestly, the league should never let you forget. If you enjoyed this, subscribe because way more is coming.